context for this is, one of the arguments that has been made in the public policy debate is the Department of Labor does not have jurisdiction over the assets and the advice being provided. Okay, so the nature of the jurisdictional issue is that the SEC, as you can imagine, has jurisdiction over securities. And that's literally what are defined as securities. If something's not a security, the SEC does not have jurisdiction over it. On the other hand, what the Department of Labor has jurisdiction over is retirement plans, primarily the kinds of 401ks with respect to which you may or may not be providing advice. The Department of Labor also has jurisdiction over independent retirement accounts. And I'm going to be using IRA to cover a number of different accounts, Roth, HSAs, but primarily you know where the money is, and that's in the standard IRA. You are already all subject to those prohibited transaction rules. But because of long-standing, often decades-old exemptions the DOL has had in place, that hasn't been a concern for your practice. What you will now be subject to are the fiduciary prohibited transactions. And those are transaction exemptions, those are transaction prohibitions that apply only to fiduciaries. So that is the second part of this analysis. And the third part is because virtually all of you are going to be engaged in prohibited transactions as fiduciaries, what are you going to do about it? You're going to have to rely on a prohibited transaction exemption, which is part 3. So the 3 steps are, am I a fiduciary? If I'm a fiduciary, am I triggering the fiduciary prohibited transactions? If so, what is the exemption I'm going to rely on so as not to be engaged in a prohibited transaction? So we're going to see immediate moves among the smart broker-dealers to level all of their reps' fees. But the ones who are panicking are probably also going to go charging into this arena of trying to level all of their fees, even though before January 1st, all of those requirements may go away. Okay, so let's look at how this is going to play out in practice. Oh, this is just an illustration of the one mutual fund complex that has disclosed its revenue sharing fees due to an SEC enforcement action. I mean, you can see in just this example, I don't know how readable it is, but you see a 10 bip spread across a 2 to 13 basis point structure. That's 5 times the revenue sharing fees being paid by one firm as opposed to another. That was one of the main goals of the DOL, was to deal with that, even though in practice, very little of that is really trickling down. Okay, so let's look at some practical examples. So we have the problem of the short-term bond fund and the corporate bond fund, stock fund, charging different levels of commissions. Will that have to be level? It'll have to be level at the advisor level. It does not have to be level at the firm level. Another example, so here's one way to look at it. So you've got money market funds across to stock funds. You've got the firm getting differential comp. And then you've got the question of how you level the comp for the advisor. Well, you simply say, what is the number that is going to end me in the same place I was before? So you say, well, I figure about a 3% commission on which I'm going to base the payout grid for all my advisors, no matter what they sell.